Hi,
Amazing.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you. I'm so happy to connect.
Me too. I'm always excited when this actually works.
Yeah, I know. Me too. So yes, hey everybody who's in the room. Here's Shelly from Nannocare, and then we have Vix here from Bogo Agency. Sorry, what was the?
Borough Social and Studios Agency.
Yes. And the podcast, which is super cool, and we can't
Thank you.
wait to learn more about it. And so, first of all, just tell everybody here a little bit about yourself, and then the agency and the podcast, because it sounds super cool.
Amazing. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited, and I'm excited to kind of learn more about Nannocare and your community. So I am the founder and CEO of Borough Social and Studios, a creative digital agency and content production house. We work with brands of all sizes to help them grow their audience, make more sales, and build their community. I have a podcast that I co-host with a friend of mine at Bach. And I'm also a business and branding coach for entrepreneurs.
Okay, great. Sounds super cool. So
Thanks.
yeah, I'm so happy to connect and then have you to do this IG live. We have so many questions, and the agency sounds super cool. And I've listened to some of the podcasts. It's super, like, it's funny, it's interesting, it's very informative.
Thank you.
So first of all, let's talk about, ways to, develop our creativity, because you're doing so much, all the creative things that you're doing with the podcast, with the agency. So tell us, how do you develop that and or even boost that, because you don't always feel creative, right? Sometimes you get tired, or, how do you keep that up every day?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge, right? We are creative because we're humans. I firmly believe that. And I think that everyone has the ability to be creative no matter what you do for work. But it can get daunting and it can be tiring. So one of the ways that I really like to maintain my creativity is to get a deeper understanding of my personality type. And I also take the 5 love languages test with my ideal client in mind. So when you can learn your own personality and then learn the personality of the people you're trying to have a conversation with, it allows you to get really creative about how to speak to them. Because when you know who, hey, Fatima, when you know who you're trying to communicate with, you actually have a better sense of what they want and what they need. So one way that I maintain my creativity as an ENTJ is that I really focus on the balance between extrovertedness, so like spending time with people, and then also being a little bit introverted. So you have to think about what fills your cup to maintain your creativity, and then doing more of that by time blocking in order to make sure you actually do it instead of saying you just want to do it.
That's so true. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Especially now, when we used to be able to, work in, because most of us are working at home right now. And then, I mean, for us, sometimes we work in office, but most of the time, like before, when the pandemic just happened, we used to work, at home. And when that happens, we were not able to be in a room together, and then everybody to have like brainstorming, and then have lots of communications. Well, that gave us a struggle on how to build that. It might get stopped and paused for a second, like we don't know what to do. We're seeing so many things online, right? So I think that what you're saying is really, it's so true, that we could use certain tools to do time management, and then also push tasks forward, to be able to do the things with teams, because even though we have the idea, it doesn't mean that it could be executed. Especially when everybody's not in the same room, right?
Yep, I think so. And, I've worked remote for a long time. My business, my entire team works remote, always has. I've been in business 5 years. Monday's my business anniversary. So I really am passionate about making work from home sustainable, because I think that you do work better when you can work on your own time.
Yeah. I totally agree. And then we were saying another interesting thing that we were we wanted to talk about is about overcoming the negative attitudes. Because as you said, everybody could be creative, and then sometimes you get tired, or sometimes is even just things happen in life, right? Like families, relationships, and all of those other things that could, block the creativity. So how to overcome those things, especially
Yeah.
in such challenging times?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you 3 ways to do that. One, create a separate space. And I know it's hard. I live in an apartment, so I know that, and I'm sure a lot of us who are on this live in apartments of varying sizes, or we live with other people in apartments of varying sizes. I'm lucky. I only have a French bulldog as a roommate, so she's little and doesn't take up too much space. But create a separate space. I think that there's a really big difference between, making sure that when you do work, you're in a space where you work, as opposed to a space where you watch TV or a space where you eat food. It doesn't have to be a large space. It just has to be purely dedicated to the work that you're doing. The other way to do that is to block time. So whether your hours are 9 to 5, 5 to 4, whatever it is, like whatever you like to work or however you like to work. Some people like to work really early. Some people like to work later. Block general time blocks to ensure that you actually have the time to get done what you want to get done, and focus on only doing the one task for 45 minutes. That's my third tip, which is to do cycles of creativity, cycles of productivity. So what does that mean? It means that every 45 minutes, I transfer from task to task, and I make sure that the task that I'm working on, I come back to it at the end of the day. So I'll have a cycle in the beginning of the day and a cycle in the end of my day to ensure that I cohesively finish the project. I also block time throughout the week to check in with my team, and I have Slack office hours and all of those things. So I think that remote work for an individual, it really just is about making sure that you're intentional about everything you do.
Yes, that sounds really cool. Those tips it sounds really helpful. And I use the time block too myself. Mine is shorter, it's 25 minutes.
Okay.
But but there's a little struggle, is like you always have to extend it sometimes, right? You don't always get to finish one thing in 25 minutes or 45 minutes. What would you do?
And I think you have to give yourself the grace, right? Like sometimes we can't really finish it in 25 minutes because the fire alarm goes off, or our kid needs us, or we have to walk the dog, or whatever, right? So I think that if we can give ourselves a little bit of grace to understand that this is a circumstance that none of us have experienced before. So it's something that we're all navigating. And also when you're thinking about managing your team, give them grace too. Managing anybody you work with, whether it's a colleague or someone who works underneath you or above you, managing up, managing down, it's important to give some grace.
Exactly. But then that also comes down to our, what we're going to talk about next is overcoming the fear of failure. Because for me, I feel the anxiety if I couldn't finish it. And then should I move on? Should I, do something else first, or should I finish this? And then that's going to take maybe another 5 to 10 minutes. It kind of breaks that time box that I drove for myself. So that's also a little struggle. So that is something that we want to talk about, is that how to overcome those kind of anxieties, or we would say the fear of failure, or what if I couldn't finish it, or I did a bad job, things like that.
I think a lot of that, we spend a lot of time alone now, right? And I feel like we're together right now, but we're not together. So I feel like almost this environment makes it more dramatic when we're really alone, because you feel even more disconnected, because I can see you and I can understand your energy, and I understand that you're happy about this conversation, but do I really know that? So that's where that negative mindset starts to creep in, because we allow ourselves to, 70% of all communication is body language. So I can only see this much of your body. I don't know what your language really is, right? It's almost like we're flying blind. So we have to now evolve that communication and really stay outside of our own heads as much as possible. Now, the way that I like to do that is journaling. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in this conversation. But I have a daily journal practice that I'm actually doing with a group coaching program that I start on Monday with some entrepreneurs that I work with. Yeah, I'm super excited. And the way that I focus on that is, how do I want to feel when I achieve this task? Because I think that creative people, and women especially, right? We really, and this is not to say that men don't feel this way, but I find of all the people I work with that women tend to exhibit this quality more than others.
Yeah.
So we feel we're connected to, like you said, did I do a good job? Was it okay? Did I do enough? Women really feel that. And I think that it's okay to feel, because that's what makes us great. That's what, because we care about other people. We're empathetic. Like we think about the outcome in such a holistic way. But it also is really hard for us. So one way that I do that is I say, I did the best I could. Now what's next will come. Like what I always say is I gave my best. And even if you don't give your best, I gave what I had to give today to this project. And then I will advance it when I have more to give, because you have to acknowledge that women are giving to everybody, right? We're giving to our spouses, we're giving to our friends, we're constantly giving. So we have to hold in a little bit for ourselves and also evaluate where we are in our cycle, right? Because I think that's a big thing to consider that women don't often talk about. But when you're home, it's something to consider.
Yes. That's so true. We're like, I don't even, realize it actually that what you just said, like we're always giving, and then it's good to know that there are so many other people that is feeling the same. Like there is this word imposter syndrome, right? So that's very similar. It's like, oh, did I actually do good? Like maybe I could have done better, maybe you could, but it doesn't have to be this time, right? So that's something that we really have to tell ourselves in order to.
And I like to say that vulnerability is your superpower. So being vulnerable, by me sharing that with you, right? Like this is the first time we're talking face to face. We've connected on Slack before, but like me being vulnerable, now you're like, oh, she feels the way I do. Like that's okay. That's cool. So I think that a lot of times women feel like we have to prove that we know everything and that we're in control. But I think if you could just say to somebody, listen, I'm really having a hard day today. Like, can we just take a minute, or I need a minute, or can you give me some grace? Like being vulnerable that way and being direct will always get you a better outcome. At least that's how I feel.
That's so true. Like I totally agree. And then it also helps me to overcome my anxiety, because I'm always mostly anxious. That's for me, not everybody else, but like I know that lots of people does have it. And so I think what you were saying about those kind of mindset is something that's really needed, that we have to keep reminding ourselves about it.
Every day. Every day. It's funny. A lot of my friends are like, you don't really seem anxious. I'm like, no, I'm a really anxious person, but it's because I feel. So when you create, you give a piece of yourself into every project. And that means that when other people consume that project or product, you take on their energy too. So, it sounds a little woo woo, but it's true. Like energetic exchange, we forget, right? We used to handshake. That's an exchange of energy. We used to clap. We used to high five. We used to do all these things. And in professional settings, that is still an exchange of energy. So when you give away some of your creativity, some of your energy, stuff's going to come back, and you don't need to take it all. That's, I think, the biggest thing. Not all the anxiety is yours.
Cool. Yes, so cool. Thank you, Vix. That's really cool. That's a really good idea. I think we're like except just like the negativity, the negative thoughts, and the fear of failure, all of that. Another thing that we want to talk about is taking risks, right?
Yes.
So why is it important to be willing to take the risk? Of course, I'm not talking about health risks.
Of course. Wear your masks. Wear your masks.
But like more of in like career wise, or like lifestyle wise, those kind of risks. So that's something that we would like to discuss about today, is that why is it important?
Yeah. Well, I want to know from you first, what's the biggest risk you've taken in the last year?
In the last year, let me think. Significant risk. I think I went on like I think we started this IG live thing. This is something that's super new. We just started it definitely just a couple months ago, and then we've never done it before. I've been so afraid of speaking in front of camera and speaking on public. So this is the first time that I actually go to different communities and reach out and make lots of connections, and then having FaceTime live with a stranger.
Yes. Yes.
We just met like online, as you said. We just met on Slack, and then we're now face to face, not face to face, like virtually face to face and talking.
You're right, virtually. This is our face to face now.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the risk. That's a really big risk I was taking on, and I've been really happy about it.
So I love that, because I think that, you know, a lot of people that I work with, that is a big risk for them, right? To put their thoughts out there, to put their brand out there, to put their opinions out there. And we've seen that type of risk become a very large reward for many. And I think that, you know, that's kind of the trite way of saying it, like the cavalier cliche way, big risk, big reward. And yes, that's true. But the reason that you have to take risks is to prove to yourself that you are more capable than you know and far braver than you understand. And I think that's the piece. The risk allows you to really take stock of how far you've come, what you've created, and what you still can do, right? Risk allows you to have reminders of your greatness. And that's why I advise everybody to take risk. Because to me, if you don't have any reminders of your greatness, if you don't have case studies for your successes, how are you going to calm those little demons in your head? You need the risk to calm the demons.
Yes, that's so true. And then the toughest part is often just taking the first step. And once it's started, then you realize that, oh, I just did it and it just happened, you know. Then you can do it again, and then you can expand.
And again and again.
And then you have a new, you know, you have you're capable to do another thing that you didn't know you could do before. So that is the best reward that I think from taking risks. That's for
I
sure.
agree with you 100%.
Yep. And then we also talked about, you know, creativity in this conversation. And then what is the best practice you think is to find the inspiration and new ideas, whether or not you're working alone or working with your team?
Yeah, so to me, some of the best ways to find inspiration is to, wait, I'm trying to give myself a better filter. There we go. One of the best ways, it's dark here today, so I'm trying to give myself a little light. One of the best ways to give yourself inspiration is to find your five. So that's how I have entrepreneurs start. I always say, find 5 brands, and they don't have to be people. They could be people or brands. 5 brands that you want to be like in 5 years. So Oprah has always been one of my 5 for my personal brand, right? I mean, who doesn't love Oprah, right? So find your 5 allows you to kind of see where they've come from. And yes, you can look at their content series. You can look at what they're creating. You can create IGTV lives because other people are doing it. That's one form of inspiration. But you can also draw inspiration from their stories of triumph, from their challenges, from how they faced opposition and how they succeeded. So that's why I think it's important to find your 5, whether they are businesses or brands. Every single business, every single brand has times of success, times of failure, times of, you know, kind of up and down, hills and valleys. So I think if we can really look at those, then we are better able to say, okay, this is how I'm going to create a game plan because I'm inspired by those who came before me.
Yes, that's so true. That it's so like I this is actually the first time I've heard this tip. I think it's so cool. About
it's a Vix Fix. It's a Vix Fix original.
Yes. This is like this is just makes the whole conversation totally worth it.
Thank you.
This is definitely a practice I'm gonna try on later. Is finding, you know, a brand where we can, you know, how to say, see it as like an idol, growth. And then we kind of learn from it and then grow to be that. Maybe you will grow a different way.
Yes.
Open to all the possibilities, but still you get inspired from them, right? So I think it's a really, really cool idea. Thanks so much.
I think another brand that I always look at, and like, again, this is an interesting one. WeWork. WeWork
is cool, yeah.
Right, but they're kind of on the down now. They're not, you know, their story is not one of triumph right now. It's a story of transformation. So what I think is interesting is to kind of watch that story. Apple is a brand that I have always kind of watched that story. And, you know, I've always been a founder. That's been who I am at my core, even before I had a company. So those stories have always been very inspiring to me. But I also will say to female entrepreneurs, pick stories with men and women as the champions, because you can learn a lot. I learned the most by watching men on the subway take up space. That's how I learned how to take up space. I did, because they take up so much space. And I learned how to really like stake my claim. Like if I was having a boardroom conversation, I learned how to have that body language that I wanted to have to be a force in the room. And, you know, that was something I learned in my early 20s, and it has served me well my entire career.
I agree. That is so true. That is so true. And I totally agree that whatever we are learning or trying to do, we shouldn't be excluding
anyone,
or age or whichever group it is, because there's always something you could learn, because everyone has different experience, and then their lifestyles and educations and culture, right? So there's always something we could learn from somebody. So I totally agree.
I think it's better to pick, like, to me, all of your 5 should be totally different from you. They should look different. They should act different. They should be totally different from you. So I think that's the biggest thing that I want people to take away from that. Those 5 should not look anything like what you think your story will be.
Yes, exactly, totally. And then the last thing is that when we look at other things that we could do, like creative journal, you have mentioned about journaling as well, mind mapping, flow chart, all of those other things, like what other tips you usually use, you know, to boost your creativity, or like work with your team, and then, or just simply adjusting your emotion?
Yeah. So to me, mental health is really the most important thing. I started my company because I felt like creative humans, especially marginalized creative humans, so BIPOC, LGBTQIA, and you know, women in general, really need extra help. And we need help because, as I've stated so many times in this conversation, our mental health is such a big part of our professional life. So one of the things that I do every day is my manifestation journal practice, which essentially is a 5-step practice. First, I write the mantra that I want to have for the day. I am strong. I am unstoppable. I am light. I am creating the success I seek, right? This strong statement to start the practice. Then I write 2 yes to statements, which basically means that I'm allowing these things to come into my life. Because we can manifest and believe in abundance all we want, but if we don't set a foundation, what I call an altar for abundance, nothing's going to come in, because you don't have a strong foundation for it, right? It's like if you say, catch me, and then you put your hands down. Like, no one's going to jump into your hands if your hands are down, right? You're like, okay, I'm ready to receive. And your hands, you're sitting on your hands. You have to really be open to it. The third thing that I do is I write down 3 things that I want the universe, God, whomever you believe, goddesses, whatever you believe in, to take care of while I do the work. Because like I just said, if we're not providing a foundation for success, success will not find us. We are not inviting it in. We are not creating a welcome space for it. The fourth thing I do is 4 words that are on my heart. So sometimes it's joy, anxiety, success. It's just 4 words. And then the 5th thing is a 5-sentence phrase to remind myself how I was triggered the day before. So there's always something, and trigger is a word that I think kind of gets overused these days. But what I mean by it is something that either inspired me or made me feel a certain type of way. So I take that 5-sentence phrase, and the reason I do this journal practice in such a systematic way is because I could journal for 3 hours, but that's like a huge waste of time. So that's why I put bounds on everything. Like, I like to keep everything focused and strategic. And to me, this allows me to look day over day, week over week, month over month. And I even have some from a few years ago at my practice and say, wow, look at how my mindset has evolved. Look at how my mission has evolved. Look at how my mantras have evolved. And it really allows me to come back to it and feel really grounded. For mind mapping, I mean, that's not a practice that I do often, but this is one that really, this manifestation guide really helps me. And then, you know, that Find Your 5 practice. Those are my 2 signature practices to really get your mindset right so that you can create that altar to abundance.
Yes, that sounds really cool. I think I want to. I wish I could have make a note of it. maybe
I'm
maybe
gonna
you can.
send you, and then you could send your audience. I have a
Yes,
PDF.
please.
I'm gonna send it to you so you could use it, and
Awesome.
I want to know how it goes.
Awesome, awesome. I'll link it on our recap where we will
Amazing.
post it on IGTV and then YouTube on our YouTube channel no, and our Facebook as well. So
Amazing.
whoever want a recap of this amazing tips that Vix just said, don't worry about it. You're gonna get them later. Um,
Yes.
yeah, and then for me as well, I do a little bit of journaling as well. And what I do is end of the day journal
Love that.
instead of in the morning. So it's to write down success story of today. So any little thing that I have done that make me feel satisfied today would be a thing. For example, I finished how many tasks at work, or what I have done today, apart from my checklist, or even as small as I make a good salad, right? So
Yeah.
just anything that just make you feel really good, and it's a good success story. So whenever there is negativities or there's self-doubts, and I can always go back to my journal and then kind of read what I have done, what I have achieved, and then that I deserve to be, happy for what I'm doing. Of course, always not stop to pursue more and improve and get better, but still trying to recognize more for what we have achieved is really important to overcome all the negativities and then the pressure, right?
I
So
love that. Yeah, that's such a good practice. I may have to incorporate that to mine too. I love it.
yes, thank you. Okay, so I think that's most of everything we want to talk about today,
Yeah.
and it was so much fun. I've got so many cool tips and useful practices, and then I hope everybody in the room enjoyed watching our live today. And then thank you so much, Vix. So I
Thank
will
you
be
so
back
much for
for the
having me. I
recap.
appreciate it. It was so much fun. Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you so much. You all have a good day, and Vix have a
Everyone,
good day.
bye-bye.
Bye bye.